The night was dark and silent. Jake drove his old truck through the empty desert road. The stars above were bright, and the wind was cool. He liked driving at night. It made him feel free. No people, no noise, just the road and the sky. Jake was a mechanic living alone in a small town. He had no family, no friends. Just a dog named Rex. But tonight, Rex was not with him. Tonight. He just wanted to drive. Then he saw it, a bright flash in the sky. Like a falling star, but it was too big, too fast, too close. It made a loud sound, boom, and the ground shook. A fireball fell behind the hills, lighting up the night. For a moment, Jake stopped the truck. His heart beat faster. What was that? He whispered. He had a choice. Go home or go see what just crashed. Curiosity won. He turned the wheel and drove off-road towards the hills. Dust flew behind his truck, and small rocks hit the tires. He reached the place in 15 minutes. What he saw was not normal. Not a plane, not a meteor. It was a ship round, broken, half buried in the sand. Metal pieces lay everywhere. Glowing with blue light, smoke rose from the cracks, and a strange humming sound filled the air. Jake got out slowly, his eyes wide. He walked toward the wreck. Step by step, every part of him said this was not from Earth. Then he saw the pod. It was like a glass coffin, half open, with frost on the sides. Inside, there was a girl, maybe 18 or 19. Her skin was pale, and her hair was silver, glowing softly. She looked human, but not completely. Her ears were pointed, and small marks glowed on her cheeks. Jake looked around. No one else was there. No movement, no sound, just the wind and the smoke. He placed his hand on the glass, and it opened with a soft hiss. Cold air came out, and the girl's eyes slowly opened. She looked at him, weak and confused. Then she closed her eyes again and passed out. Jake didn't know what to do, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her here. He lifted her gently, surprised at how light she was. She was breathing, but barely. He turned to go back to his truck. Then the red light touched his chest. He froze. A red dot, like a laser, was locked on him. He turned his head slowly and saw something moving in the dark. Not a man, not an animal. Something tall, thin, with sharp limbs and glowing eyes. It made no sound as it moved closer. Jake panicked. He ran, holding the girl tight. The thing behind him moved fast. Blue lights flashed from its arm, hitting the sand and burning it. Jake reached the truck, opened the door, and threw the girl inside. He jumped in and started the engine. The truck roared and sped forward, sand flying behind it. The creature chased them faster than any human could run. It jumped, and Jake swerved, barely dodging its strike. One of the side mirrors broke off, but the truck kept moving. For 10 minutes, Jake drove like never before. The thing stopped chasing after a while, but he didn't stop. Not until he reached the old radio tower, abandoned years ago. He parked the truck behind the broken building and carried the girl inside. She was still unconscious, breathing slow. Jake looked at her again. She looked peaceful now, like she was just sleeping. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she being hunted? He checked her for wounds, but there were none. Just the glowing marks on her skin. He wrapped her in his jacket and sat beside her, confused and scared. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes again. She sat up slowly and looked at Jake. Her lips moved, but no words came. Then she placed her hand on her chest and said softly, "Zira." Jake pointed to himself. "Jake," he said. She repeated, "Jake," and gave a small smile. Then her face turned serious. She looked toward the door, eyes wide in fear. She pointed outside and said one word. "Hunter." Jake stood up, heart pounding again. Was that thing still out there? Was more coming? He didn't know, but one thing was clear: This was not over. Not even close. Asterisk, the night wind howled through the broken windows of the old radio tower. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts. Jake stood near the door, holding a rusty pipe in his hand. The alien girl's Zir sat quietly on the floor, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. Her eyes stayed locked on the door, wide with fear. She had only said one word, "Hunter." Jake didn't know what that meant, but he didn't like it. He had seen something out there tall, fast, and deadly. Now it might be coming for them. Suddenly, a strange clicking sound echoed from outside. Click, click, click. Like metal tapping on stone, Jake's heart raced. He peeked through a crack in the door, but saw nothing, just sand and shadows. Then the tower's radio, dead for years, crackled to life. A voice whispered through the static. In a strange language, Zero jumped up, staring at the radio like it was a snake. She ran to it and hit a small button on her wrist. And the signal stopped instantly. She looked at Jake, breathing fast, and said one word again, "Run." Jake didn't wait. He grabbed her hand. And they ran out into the desert night. The moon lit the sand in silver, and the wind cut across their faces. Behind them, the tower exploded. Something had fired from above. The ground shook, and metal pieces rained down. Jake and Zira kept running. They didn't know where, they just ran, far ahead. A line of broken ruins sat half buried in the sand. Old stone walls, maybe from an ancient town. Jake pulled her toward it as they reached the ruins. The sound came again, clicks, click, click, click. Jake turned and saw them. Not one, but three. Hunters, tall, thin, their skin like dark steel, eyes glowing red. Each held a weapon that buzzed softly with deadly power. Jake and Zero ducked behind a crumbling wall. Jake tried to stay calm, but his hands were shaking. He whispered, "What do they want? Why are they after you?" Zero didn't answer with words. She raised her hand and pointed to the stars. Then she touched her own heart. And then Jake's. It wasn't just about her. This was bigger. Something powerful. Something dangerous. A loud whir filled the air. And one of the hunters fired. The blast hit the wall just above Jake's head, turning stone to dust. Jake grabbed Zira's arm, and they moved fast, deeper into the ruins. They turned corners, ducked through holes, jumped over broken stone. But the hunters kept coming, fast and silent. Zero suddenly stopped and touched the ground. Her hand glowed. And a hidden panel opened in the sand. A round door with strange alien symbols slid open. Jake stared. "You had a hiding place here all along." She nodded and pulled him inside. The door closed behind them, sealing out the sound. Total darkness, then blue lights lit the walls, revealing a secret room underground. It looked old, dusty, but filled with strange tech. Zero walked to a console and placed her hand on it. Holograms appeared, images of planets, stars, and one face, hers, wearing a crown. Jake looked around in disbelief. "Are you a princess?" he asked, softly. She nodded slowly, eyes full of sadness. She tapped the screen, and a map appeared, a route from her world to Earth. Then an explosion appeared on the screen, her ship, shot down by hunters. Jake understood. Now she was royalty, escaping enemies, and those hunters. They were sent to kill or capture her. Zero showed one last image, a symbol, glowing in red. A warning, Jake guessed. Then she looked at him and said, "Need help?" "Finish the path." Jake sat down, his head spinning. He was just a mechanic, a nobody. Now he was hiding with an alien princess, hunted by killers from space. But he looked at her and knew he couldn't walk away. He had to help her. Just then, the ground shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the hidden door began to heat up, melting from the outside. The hunters had found them, and they were cutting their way in. Jake stood, clenched his fists, and looked at Zero. Time to fight back, he said. The secret room was falling apart. The walls shook, lights flickered, and the air grew hot. The hunters were melting through the door. Inch by inch, Jake grabbed a metal rod and stood in front of Zero, ready to fight. He was scared, but he wasn't going to run this time. Zero didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes. The glowing marks on her skin began to change, spreading across her arms like vines of light. A low humming filled the air, and the console behind her started to respond. Old machines woke up, as if waiting for her touch for 100 years, suddenly. The wall on the left cracked open, not from damage, but by design. A hidden tunnel revealed itself. Full of blue lights and soft wind, Zero opened her eyes and pointed. "Go, Jake." Followed her down the tunnel, the heat of the melting door growing stronger behind them. As they ran, he shouted, "How did you do that? What is this place?" Zero answered in broken English, "My people came. Long ago, before your time." She touched the wall as they passed, and the symbols glowed like fireflies. This place is memory. They reached the end of the tunnel, stepping into a round chamber filled with floating orbs. Each orb held an image: cities in the clouds, silver towers, alien planets spinning in space. In the center was a single chair, smooth and metallic, shaped like a flower. Zero walked toward it and sat down, her hand resting on the armrest. A giant image appeared in the air, a map of stars, and a planet glowing red. Jake stared at it, confused. "Is that Earth?" Zero shook her head. "No, my home." Dying, she began to speak faster, her words clearer. "I ran from war. My people sent me here to find the old ship. To survive." Jake's eyes widened. "Wait, there's a ship buried here." Zero nodded, and one of the orbs floated toward Jake. Inside, he saw a memory, not his, but hers. It showed Zero as a child, watching a great silver ship land on Earth 100 years ago. It buried itself beneath the sand, hidden from all, protected by time. "This ship," she said, "can take us to safety if we wake it." Jake stepped back, trying to understand. "So you're not just royalty. You're the key." Before Zero could answer, the ground above shook again, harder this time. The hunters had entered the first room, and they were getting close. Zero stood up, her glowing skin brighter than ever. She pressed both hands on the floor of the chamber, and the orbs all flew into the ceiling like stars returning home. A deep voice echoed from the walls, speaking in her language, soft and powerful. Jake felt it in his chest, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. The floor began to move, turning slowly, like a massive gear. A small staircase opened under them, leading even deeper into the earth. "This way," Zero said, her voice strong now. Jake followed, still gripping the metal rod, his knuckles white. The stairs led to a vast underground hangar, dark and silent, but in the middle, sleeping under layers of dust and stone, was the ship. It was huge, round like a teardrop, silver and black with markings along the side. Even sleeping, it felt alive. Zero stepped onto a platform and touched a panel. The entire ship responded, lights blinking one by one like eyes opening. After a long sleep, she turned to Jake and whispered, "This is our only chance." Suddenly, boom. The hunters had found them again, dropping into the chamber from above. 3 red lasers locked onto Zero, their weapons charging. Jake didn't think, he just moved. He grabbed a loose piece of metal and threw it at one of the hunters. Drawing their fire, Zero stepped forward, raising both hands. A wave of light exploded from her body, knocking the hunters back like paper in a storm. Her eyes glowed white, and her voice echoed in 2 tones, hers and something ancient. The ship responded to her call, its engines rumbling softly. Jake ran to her, panting. "What was that?" Zero turned slowly, her power dimming. I am more than princess. I am heir of the last flame. Jake stared at her, the glowing ship behind her lighting the chamber like sunrise. He knew now this wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something far greater. The ship woke like a sleeping giant. Its silver body lit up with soft pulses of light. Engines hummed low, like a beast taking its first breath in 100 years. Zira stood at the center of it all, calm, glowing, powerful. Jake stood beside her, still gripping his metal rod like a soldier with a wooden sword. Behind them, the hunters rose again. Their metal bodies cracked, but not broken. They moved faster now, more aggressive, as if knowing time was running out. One pointed a blade arm toward Zira and launched forward with a screech. Jake shouted and stepped between them, but he wasn't fast enough. The hunter leaped through the air. Then, something massive dropped from above. Slamming into the floor with thunder, a giant figure landed between Jake and the hunters. Tall and armored in stone-like plates. Its eyes glowed green. Its fists as big as barrels. The air rippled. With its presence, ancient and heavy, the hunters stopped moving. Frozen in place, even they were afraid. Zero looked at the creature and whispered, "Guardian." The creature slowly turned its head to her and kneeled, one fist to the floor. Dust lifted around its massive legs like a storm bowing to the wind. Jake stepped back, stunned. "You summoned that thing?" Zero nodded. "It protects the flame." "It protects me." One of the hunters didn't care. It jumped forward again, but the Guardian moved like lightning. Its fist crashed into the ground, sending a shockwave across the chamber. The hunter was thrown back into the wall like a rag doll, sparking and twitching. Jake looked at Zira, amazed. "You control it?" "No," she replied. "It remembers me." The ship above them continued to wake. Gears turning, lights flashing in sequence. Zero stepped closer to the Guardian and pressed her hand to its chest. Alien symbols lit up across its body, and it rose to its full height, nearly touching the ceiling. Jake noticed something in its chest, an old human symbol, buried under dust, a red circle with 3 lines. It was the mark of Project Titan, a secret Earth program rumored to have vanished decades ago. "What is that?" Jake asked, pointing. At the symbol, Zira looked at him, her eyes dimming a little. "Your people helped build it." Jake was stunned. "Wait, humans. On your planet." "Long ago," she said, "your world forgot." "But we didn't." Another hunter crawled from the shadows, damaged but alive. It raised its weapon and fired straight at Zira. Jake jumped to shield Herb. The Guardian caught the blast in its hand and crushed the weapon like glass. Then it picked up the hunter and smashed it to the ground. Hard, again and again, until it stopped moving. The room grew quiet, filled only with the ship's heartbeat. Zira walked to the ship's doorway, which had now opened like a blooming flower. She turned back to Jake. "Come. We must move before more come." Jake hesitated, looking at the giant stone Guardian still standing silently behind her. "Is it coming with us?" Zero shook her head. "No, it stays. Until I call again." Jake stepped onto the ship, the floor feeling strangely soft under his boots. As the doors closed, he looked back one last time. The Guardian stood like a statue in the glowing chamber, watching silently, protecting what remained inside the ship. Lights guided them through smooth, curving hallways. Zira led him to a round chamber full of floating panels and holograms. She touched one. A large screen appeared, showing a red, blinking dot moving fast toward them. "Another ship, more hunters," she whispered. "They know the flame is active." Jake looked around. "Then we need to fly now." Zira moved to the central console and placed her hands on it. The ship responded immediately, rising without sound, the walls shaking as it powered up, A soft voice echoed in the room, ancient and smooth. Speaking both her language and English. Navigation. Active power systems. Full departure. Now the ground above them opened like a stone flower, and the ship lifted silently into the desert sky. Jake looked down, watching the earth shrink as they rose higher. The sun peeked over the horizon, lighting the ship's wings in gold. But behind them, chasing through the sky, was another ship, black and fast. The hunters weren't done yet. Zero looked at Jake and said only 2 words. "Hold on." Asterisk, the alien ship sliced through the clouds like a silver blade. Below, earth faded into shadows. Above, stars stretched across the sky like ancient, watchful eyes. Jake sat strapped into a curved seat beside Zira, his knuckles white. The enemy ship was closing fast behind them, dark and silent, like a shadow that could kill. Zira tapped the glowing console, her hands moving in circles. The ship responded. Flipping sharply and diving low, Jake gritted his teeth as pressure crushed into his chest. The alien vessel behind them followed every move like it knew the ship's design. Jake looked at Zira. "They know this ship, don't they?" Zira nodded. It was made. From both worlds, before Jake could ask what she meant, the enemy fired. A bright blue blast struck their tail, shaking the ship violently. Sparks flew from the panels, and warning lights flashed red. Zira's fingers danced faster over the controls. But the ship was failing. "We need to land," she said. "Hide. Fix the damage." Jake checked the radar. "There's an old airbase, not far abandoned since the last war." Zero changed course, flying low between 2 cliffs, disappearing into a canyon of shadows. The enemy ship lost track at least for now. The ship landed rough, sliding across cracked concrete, then stopped behind a wall of rusted hangars. Smoke rose from the engines, and silence followed. Jake stepped out first, scanning the area. Broken planes, collapsed towers, dead silence. Zero followed him, her glow dim now, her body shaking from the energy she had used. He helped her sit down, handing her water. "We're safe for now," he said, trying to believe it. Then a voice echoed across the open space. Well. Never thought I'd see you again, Jake." Jake froze. He knew that voice. From the shadows walked a tall man in military armor holding a plasma rifle. His name was Briggs, Jake's old squad leader, long thought dead. Jake stepped forward. "Briggs, what the hell are you doing here?" Briggs smiled coldly, following the money before Jake could react. Dozens of soldiers stepped out from behind the hangars, weapons raised. They weren't government, not military mercenaries, and they had come for Zira. Zero stood slowly. Her eyes locked on Briggs. He raised his rifle slightly. "That girl's worth more than anything I've ever seen." Jake stepped in front of her. "She's not for sale." Briggs laughed. "Oh, Jake, always playing hero." Then he aimed and fired directly at Jake's shoulder. Jake dropped to the ground, pain ripping through him. Zira screamed and tried to run to him but was grabbed by 2 mercenaries in full armor. They placed cuffs on her wrists, glowing with anti-energy fields. She collapsed, powerless. Jake tried to crawl, blood on his arm, eyes burning with rage. Briggs knelt beside him. "You could have had a cut," he whispered, "but you chose her." Then he stood and walked away, giving the order, "Take the girl, kill the ship." Jake passed out as fire rose behind him, the ship burning. His last memory was Zero being dragged onto a black carrier, her eyes still on him. No words, just one final look full of sorrow. Hours later, Jake woke up in the ruins, half buried in rubble. His shoulder was bandaged. Someone had stopped the bleeding. He looked around, confused, dizzy. Then he heard a low, mechanical voice near his ear. "Awake. Flames protector." Jake turned his head and saw something unbelievable. A small round drone hovering beside him, its eye blinking blue. It was from Zira's ship, still alive, still watching. The drone projected a map in the air, showing the location of the black carrier ship. Zira's location was marked in red, blinking slowly, like a heartbeat. Jake clenched his jaw, stood up, picked up a fallen plasma rifle. He was injured, outnumbered and far behind, but he was not giving up, not on her. Asterisk, the desert wind howled across the dead airbase. Smoke still rose from the burned remains of Zira's ship. Jake stood among the wreckage, his shoulder bleeding, eyes locked on. The blinking red light from the drone, Zira, was alive, but for how long? He wrapped his wound tighter with strips from his shirt. Pain burned through his arm, but he didn't care. She had saved him more than once. Now it was his turn. The drone hovered close and spoke in a soft digital voice. Rescue protocol. Engaged, it projected a 3D map in front of him. Zira was being held inside a moving prison ship. Destination, orbit station, controlled by bounty lords, Jake whispered. Then we stop it before it gets there. He found an old aircraft hidden beneath a tarp in one of the hangars, a prototype fighter never finished, never flown, but its design was part alien. Zira's ancestors had left technology behind, and now that gift would be used to save her. Jake spent hours with the drone, hot wiring circuits, patching systems, and syncing the flight controls. His hands were bloody, his body shaking, but his will was unbroken when the sun began to rise. The engine roared like a wild animal waking from a long sleep. Jake strapped in, flipped the switches, and looked up at the sky. "This is for you, Zira," he said, voice steady. Then the jet lifted off, dust exploded below. He rose into the sky like a firestorm. Above Earth-high orbit, the black carrier ship floated like a shark in the sky. Inside, Zira sat in a glowing prison cell, weak, her energy drained by the cuffs on her wrists. Briggs stood outside the cell, arms crossed, staring at her like she was a prize to be sold. "You don't look like royalty now," he smirked. Zira looked up slowly, her voice soft. "You are already defeated," Briggs laughed. "Really?" From where I'm standing, boom, the ship shook. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed through the halls. Something had hit the ship hard, outside. Jake's fighter sliced through the stars, launching a second barrage of plasma rounds. He flew like he was born in the cockpit, using every trick the drone taught him. The carrier responded with turrets, but he dodged them like shadows in wind. One engine exploded, and the prison ship tilted hard to the left. Inside, Briggs shouted into a "Come, who the hell is attacking us?" A soldier replied, It's one ship, sir," Briggs growled. "Then kill him." Zira smiled faintly, eyes burning with hope. She knew that pilot. Inside the carrier, Jake crash-landed through the cargo bay, ejecting at the last second. He rolled across the metal floor and rose with his rifle drawn. Alarms blared and mercenaries poured in from both sides. But Jake didn't stop. He ran through fire, through bullets, through pain. Every blast that hit near him made him move. Faster, the drone flew beside him, hacking doors, shutting down cameras. It projected a red path toward the holding cells. Jake followed like a soldier with nothing to lose. His heart burned with one goal: get to her. Holding cell block 3, Briggs opened the cell. Grabbing Zira by the arm, "You're coming with me," he said. "We're leaving before this whole place goes down." But before he could drag her out, Jake kicked the door in. Smoke behind him, fire in his eyes. "Let her go," he said. Briggs aimed his weapon. "You just don't know when to die, do you?" Jake fired first. The shot knocked Briggs back, but he wasn't down. The two men crashed into each other, fists flying, slamming into walls and consoles. It was brutal, messy, personal. Zira, still weak, reached for the fallen cuffs remote and pressed the release. Her body glowed again, light returning to her skin. She stood, raised her hand, and sent a wave of force that threw Briggs across the room. Jake leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Nice timing, Zira smiled. Told you. Not defeated, escape, they ran together through the collapsing ship. Zira used her powers to hold doors open. Jake carried her when her legs gave out. They reached the fighter just as the carrier began to break apart. Briggs, bloody but alive, crawled out from the wreck, shouting curses into the flames. But he was too late. Jake and Zira took off, flying into open space as the carrier exploded behind them like a dying star. Flames and metal danced across the stars, but they didn't look back. Inside the fighter, Jake held the controls. Zira rested beside him, her head on his shoulder. Her eyes closed, save for the first time in days. You came back for me, she whispered. Jake smiled. I said I would. She touched his chest gently. Then, I give you what no other has. He looked at her, confused. What do you mean? Zira closed her eyes, her glow warming the cabin. And softly she whispered, my world. Asterisk, the stars stretched out like a sea of fireflies. Jake's ship drifted silently through space, guided only by Zira's touch. Behind them, Earth faded into memory. Ahead, a new world waited. Zira sat in the co-pilot seat, her silver hair glowing softly. Jake watched her in silence. He had flown through death, fire, and betrayal. But right now, it was the quiet that felt unreal. You never asked, Zira said suddenly, voice calm, why we came to your world. Jake looked over. I figured it wasn't for sightseeing. Zira smiled, faint and sad. Our galaxy is dying. The royal blood carries an ancient spark. We searched for a world to protect it. She looked at him, but we found something better. The ship approached a glowing blue nebula, and then through it a hidden planet emerged. It was beautiful. With golden skies and violet oceans, Jake had never seen anything like it. Is this your home? He asked. Zira shook her head. No. This is ours now. As they landed, towers rose from the surface like living crystal. Creatures of light watched them from the trees. And the air shimmered with quiet music. Zira led him through a path of glowing stones until they reached a circle of elders, alien beings, wise and silent, all bowing at her arrival. Jake felt out of place, just a human, a mechanic with a patched jacket and a healing wound. But Zira held his hand tightly and said, You brought me home, the eldest. Stepped forward, a staff glowing in his hand. He spoke in their language, and Zira translated softly. They ask, What you wish in return? Jake thought for a long moment. He had no kingdom, no family, no dreams left behind. He looked at Zira, then at the stars above. I didn't do it for a reward, he said. I did it because it was right. The elders smiled something rare, almost divine. The ground glowed under Jake's feet, and a symbol lit up on his chest, golden and ancient. Zira's eyes widened. They've chosen you. You carry the flame now. Jake stepped back. Wait me. She nodded. The flame doesn't mean power. It means purpose. She placed her hand over his heart. You are now guardian of both our worlds. Jake laughed quietly, still trying to believe it. Do I get a crown at least? Zira smiled, leaned closer, and whispered, No, you get me. 1 week later, new ship was built, one made with Earth's bones and alien wings. Jake walked through the hangar, now dressed in a black coat with the symbol of the flame on his chest. Zira walked beside him. No longer a princess, but something more, his partner. His equal. Together, they would travel the stars, protect the flame, answer calls from distant planets, and remind the galaxy that sometimes the bravest hero isn't born from a great army, but from an old truck in the desert. The human rescued the alien princess, and in return, he was given the universe.